G'day and welcome to the channel. My name is Mark. I'm a retired Kiwi bloke. I'm a huge rugby fan and I'm living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Thanks for joining me today on the channel. Now I'm going to talk about Scotland versus Australia, and it was a really interesting game to watch from a number of different reasons, this particular one. Now, it's not often in an international rugby game that you can sum the game up by using just one word that applies to both teams. But in this case you can, and that word is composure. And if you watch the start of this game, Australia got the kickoff at the beginning of the game, and Noah Lolesio made a huge stuff up by not kicking the ball more than 10 metres. Scotland also stuffed up by knocking on the ball when they decided to play at the ball. So composure was going to be the big decider in this particular game, and that's the way it worked out. So let's have a look at it. Now, after that little stuff up at the beginning of the game, Australia started off really well. In fact, in the first 10 minutes they had all of the possession and they had all of the territory, but Scotland's defence was mighty, and while Australia were trying to run the ball at Scotland, their defensive line was holding strong. And then Scotland ended up getting back into the game, and as the game went on they got more and more composed, and they were able to then put more pressure on the Australians. And as they did that, the Australians' composure fell away, and we ended up seeing plenty of penalties, and that was one of the big problems for Australia in this game. As the game went on, more and more penalties came against Australia, particularly in the breakdown area, and I thought Richie Darge and Fagerson were doing really good work in the breakdown, and they were catching Australia out with their timing. Now, the injury toll has started to take its toll on the Australian Wallabies as this game was unfolding, but also leading into the game we saw a couple of crucial things happen during the game. First of all, if you didn't see it, Angus Bell went down a couple of times with a hamstring problem, and it was really impacting him at scrum time, and he was having all sorts of problems. But Australia saw Joseph Suaalii go off as well in this game for Australia with a very sore wrist. I don't know whether it's broken or not, but that was a major problem to him. And all of a sudden Australia had a very makeshift looking defensive line in the back line, with Andrew Callaway having to go in to the centre position. Len Ekitau also got injured in this game, and you could see he was labouring at different times, particularly when he was in defence. So Australia were really under the pump for a lot of this game, and you could see how it was affecting their defensive pattern. And as the game went on, well, we saw the composure from Finn Russell becoming more and more important in the game as he started controlling the game from number 10. And let's face it, Finn Russell is one of the best number 10s in world rugby at the moment. He's an absolute magician. The only thing I'll say is, against the top teams like New Zealand and perhaps South Africa and maybe Ireland, we don't see Finn Russell playing at the kind of standard that he does against teams like Australia, Wales and Fiji. That's one thing I've noted over the years. But in this game, as the game was going on, it was all Finn Russell in terms of moving the Scottish team around the field. He was doing brilliant strategic kicks in play. He was also doing great running to the line and putting other players through and over the gain line. And he was also setting off with very good passes that were putting players into the gap, particularly Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones as well. So the more the game went on, the composure that Russell was showing from a Scottish point of view was creating those problems for Australia. And as I've mentioned in a previous video, the area that I think Australia is the most vulnerable at the moment is in their defensive line. And we really saw it start to hit them hard in the second half. The teams went to half-time with Scotland in the lead by 7 points to 3. So the game was really anybody's at that stage. But I did think Scotland went to half-time improving their play around the field, and they were getting more opportunities against Australia. Darcy Graham and Duhan van der Merwe out wide were causing some problems to the Australian defensive line, and it looked like they were going to get through sooner or later, score a try. 7-3 at half time quickly became 10-3 after Finn Russell got an early penalty over in the second half. And then on the 50th minute we saw Duhan van der Merwe go over in a very, very good try from Scotland, and that kind of opened the door for Scotland to really put more pressure on Australia. and that's where we started to see them fall away. I always thought with Australians' injury worries and their lack of bench support in this particular game, the last 20 minutes of this game was going to be incredibly hard for Australia, and I didn't see them making the kind of comeback that they did against England actually happening in this game. But it was in that 10-minute period between the 60th minute and the 70th minute that Scotland really took this game away from Australia. They scored 2 tries in that 10 minutes, one to Bayliss, the other to Finn Russell, and it really stretched the lead on the scoreboard that Scotland had out to 27 points to 6. There was perhaps no coming back for Australia in this game with any fairy tale ending like we saw at Twickenham. But to their credit, they dug in and they really tried to give it a go. And while it was a little bit too late for Australia in the 74th minute, we saw a fantastic try from their debutant on the wing. His name is Harry Potter. Yes, that's a true story. And he scored what for me was the try of the weekend in this weekend's Autumn International Series. If you look at the try in slow motion, the way that he was able to get the ball down and force the ball in the in goal before his leg touched the dead ball line, it was an absolutely seasoned professional effort from Harry Potter, who was playing his first test match for Australia. So that was the try of the weekend for me, and it got Australia a little bit back on the scoreboard. That got the score back to 27-13, a glimmer of hope for Australia to get back into this one in the last few minutes, and they camped themselves down on the Scottish line in the dying moments of this game and were unlucky not to be able to get over for another try. But it was fantastic Scottish defence which we'd seen throughout the entire game. And again, I use the word composure. We saw a great composure from the Scottish defence throughout this game. Every time Australia tried to open up the game, they were there tackling and taking their man out very effectively indeed. And we didn't see the likes of Tom Wright and Len Ekitau getting through the gaps like we have seen in previous games for Australia. So yeah, there we go. Composure is the word of the game for me. Scotland played under that composure, led by Finn Russell throughout the game. Their defence was absolutely fantastic against this Australian Wallaby team, and I thought Australia lacked a lot of composure at different times throughout this game. Noah Lolesio had one of his worst games. I've seen him play in the yellow jersey, made a lot of mistakes. One of the things he's doing very poorly is his kicks for touch through penalties. He's only getting about a 20-metre gain. These kicks should be going 40 or 50 metres down the field of play, and he's not giving his forwards the opportunity to go on attack in line-out. So that's one area of play that Noah Lolesio has to have a close look at, in my opinion. Australia got a little bit rattled in this game for my liking, and we saw it in that second game against Argentina, didn't we? Earlier this year in Argentina, when Argentina ran up that cricket score against Australia, their defence just fell away on that occasion. It wasn't as bad in this game, but there were signs of it happening, and Scotland were putting raid after raid against the Australian line. It was looking very vulnerable. So I think this is an area that Joe Schmidt is going to have to work on. It's going to be interesting to see what players he's got left to put out against Ireland next weekend, which will be their last game of their Grand Slam tour of the UK, which is no longer possible now for them to get that after that loss to Scotland. But putting that aside, I think the game against Ireland is going to be a cracker at the Aviva Stadium next weekend. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from this Australian team. I think this was a really good test against Scotland, against a team that came to them with a lot of experience. And for this young Australian team, they'll go away and learn from this, and I'm sure Joe Schmidt will be able to put some great things in place for them to play against Ireland next weekend. And then after that, well, Australia are going to be looking forward to that British and Irish Lions tour next year in Australia, and I for one can't wait for that to happen. I think it's going to be a very exciting tour, and I think this Wallabies team is going to be extremely competitive against the British and Irish Lions next year. But before we get there, they've got one last challenge, and that's going to be against Ireland. Ireland had a good win against Fiji this weekend, and they're going to be ready for the Wallabies at the Aviva Stadium. There's no doubt about it. I thought the Australian forwards did well at times in this game. They were comprehensively beaten, I thought, at breakdowns by the Scottish players. They had also a couple of fumbles at line-out time, and that might have been because Amosa had started this game for Australia, and maybe the communication wasn't on for the Australians. When we did see Nick Frost come on in the second half, things did improve a little bit for Australia in that area, but unfortunately in the first half it went away a little bit from them. Salakai Lotto for me is a bench player. He's got to come on and make an impact in the last 20 minutes. He started this game for Australia, and therefore their forwards, particularly in the set piece, didn't look as good as they had in previous parts of this tour, in my opinion. I thought Jake Gordon did pretty well, but I was screaming out for Tate McDermott to come on for Australia in the second half, and when he did, things went up to another level and they started putting pressure on Scotland in those last few minutes of the game. So I think Tate McDermott is obviously earning the right, in my opinion, to start these games for Australia. Is Joe Schmidt going to make that change against Ireland next weekend? Let's look out for that one. But Australia do look like they're walking wounded at the moment, so the next selections for the Irish game are going to be very interesting to see whether or not Joe Schmidt can put out close to his best team for that particular game. So for me, it was a very good win by Scotland. Their composure throughout the game got them across the line, and they put enough pressure on Australia that they were able to break them in the second half, and they came home with wind in their sails. Australia won't be too disappointed, I don't think, in this one. They were beaten by a good Scottish team, but they'll still go to Dublin next weekend believing that they can knock over this Irish team. There's still a lot of good rugby left in this Wallaby team in 2024, that's for sure. I hope we see an improved effort from Noah Lolesio if he does get the start against Ireland, or will Joe Schmidt put Ben Donaldson in there at number 10? I'd like to hear your views on that one in the comments. Also, let me know what you thought of this game. Am I correct in talking about composure? I thought that was the key word for this game in the weekend, but you let me know in the comments what you thought of it and anything else that stuck out in your viewing of this particular game. Thanks very much for watching my videos. If you do enjoy my channel, don't forget, hit the subscribe button, give this video a like and a thumbs up as well, and I'll see you again really soon right here on Inside Rugby with Mark from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Until next time, stay well, stay safe everyone, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, and I'll see you all again very shortly. Until then, it's bye for now.